You are listening to Unstoppable Actors, the essential podcast for ambitious, aspiring actors with me. I'm Louise, the founder of Standby Method Acting Studio, and every week I'll be talking with you and sharing how you can become a paid, working, unstoppable actor, because you can. An acting career is doable. Are you ready? Hey, Unstoppable Actor. Welcome to another juicy episode of the Unstoppable Actors podcast. I'm so excited to dive into what is a very meaty subject. We're going to be exploring the question, is method acting dangerous? Because this is discussed to no end in the industry, and you may or may not have heard people talking about the dangers of method acting. And I wanted to explore it because I've had a student recently, a new one, who came to me, and before I started working with him, he said, I've really been fascinated by the method. All my favourite actors use the method, and yet I've heard so many people tell me to stay away from it because it's dangerous. So we're going to explore this, where these comments come from, whether it is dangerous or not, what psychologists say about acting, and my own personal experience as well. So we've got a real big kind of bird's eye view of this entire question, is method acting dangerous? And of course, I would love you to leave your views, your opinions, your thoughts and your experiences in the comments section, which is at the bottom of this page where the podcast is. Now, before we dive into this meaty topic and unpack it, and there's lots to unpack, let me tell you, I just want to let you know that we've got our brilliant 5-day method acting challenge coming up. It starts on Monday the 3rd of May and it runs until Friday the 7th of May, and enrolment is now open. I've left the link underneath this podcast if you want to go and check it out, and you'll basically be learning 5 brilliant method acting exercises to help you to start to master the process that those big actors who are always on the silver screen, in the theatres, use, so you can create performances like they do as well. So the link is below if you want to go and check that out. So let's get started with this subject then. Oh my God. As I was planning this podcast, I was like, where do I actually start? Because it is such a big topic. And I thought the best place would be with my own experience. So I went to a traditional drama school, as many of you who have been following Standby Method Acting Studio for a while will know. And if you are new to Standby, then yep, I went to a traditional drama school and I trained there for 3 years and obviously got a degree in acting at the end. So it wasn't university, it was a drama school. But of course, when you're studying at drama school, it's affiliated with a university. That's why you get a degree. Anyway, as I was in my 3rd year, I started to express to my tutors that I wanted to explore method acting. I'd become really fascinated by it. I'd started, discovering the work of Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Dustin Hoffman, Meryl Streep, all these big actors who, were associated with the method, they trained in the method. And the further I went into this exploration of it, the more fascinated I became, because I was like, wow, like these actors are on a whole other level from, the ones that I'd been watching at the theatre or on TV. There was an edge about them. There was something different. And then obviously, as I continued to research, I came across Lee Strasberg and I started doing a lot of reading on, the way he developed the method, continued to develop it from Stanislavski's original system, as it was called. And it sounded fascinating. Some of the exercises that they were doing sounded fascinating. And, how articulate Lee Strasberg was and how committed he was to the craft was something that really appealed to me. So I then presented this to my directors at my traditional drama school training. And one of them said, no, you want to stay away from the method. It's highly dangerous and you're going to pigeonhole yourself. And there was something in me that didn't quite understand that, because I was like, how can that be? How can it be dangerous when you've got all these brilliant actors who are commercially successful and they've got careers that have spanned over absolute decades, And, they've got lots of accolades for their awards, and they are known the world over, and people love their work, and they've got fans everywhere. Something didn't sit right with me. And then, that comment about pigeonholing yourself as well. I thought, I don't understand that. I really don't understand how I would be pigeonholing myself. Again, because you look at someone like Dustin Hoffman, who trained in the method with Lee Strasberg, and he's done everything from comedy to straight roles. And I was just so confused. But I was very, naive back then. So I listened to these people and I just didn't follow this curiosity that I had for method for a long, long time. So that was my first experience of hearing that the method was dangerous, but nobody told me why they thought it was dangerous. And then this student that I've already told you about, who I recently started working with, had a very similar experience to me and was again told by a different acting coach, don't study method, it's really, really dangerous. And so as I was putting this podcast together, I thought, where are these comments actually coming from? Is it ignorance? As in, these people have heard things, they've heard about actors going to emotionally dark places and then not recovering from it. Is that what it is? And so they've put two and two together and just made this judgment that method is dangerous. Is it that they hear these sensationalist stories, for example, the way Daniel Day-Lewis preps his characters, and they've gone, no, that's too extreme, and they've formed a judgment? Now, of course, I would not know where these comments come from unless I actually asked each individual. And I'm going to be honest, I don't have time to go around and do that. But it did get me thinking, where are these comments coming from? And then I was thinking about the whole thing around Heath Ledger playing the Joker, and I had a look into it, and I typed into Google, is method acting dangerous? Because I wanted to deliver an informed podcast to you. I didn't just want to give you my opinions on it. So as I typed, is method acting dangerous, into Google, lots of different things came up. So there was lots of articles, and there were acting coaches giving their opinions again. And some were saying, if you're having to do exercises that take you away from the scene, it's no longer acting, and that's dangerous territory. And then there were other articles that were saying actually method acting for a good majority of actors is a very cathartic experience, and it helps them feel a sense of purpose, and it helps them feel like they're developing as people. So there was very mixed opinions on Google, and obviously Google is not the god of method acting, but I thought that was a good place to start. So then I decided to ask my students. So we've got a private group for our students that train with us. And I just popped a question in there and I said, I'm going to be doing a podcast on whether the method is dangerous or not. What had you heard about the method before you started training in it, either with Standby or elsewhere? And have you found that it is dangerous? So I'm going to read a couple of the comments. I'm not going to read them all because they're quite long. So one of my students said, I wasn't even aware of the dangers, in quotes, of method acting, or that it was even a thing before I started. I just kind of found out that all the actors I enjoyed watching happened to be method actors. In terms of whether it's dangerous, I think that all depends on the person. It can be if someone takes it too far, but then that's the same with anything. The guidelines are there to help give the best and most real performance you can, but then you should always take care of yourself, and only you can know what's going too far and what isn't, which I thought was a very nice balanced view. And then another one of our students said, I also didn't know what it actually was before I started with Standby, although I had heard of it. I agree with comment before that I've just read out. It is really important to only go to those places that you are comfortable going to, but that obviously requires you to be fully aware of your triggers and to know yourself really well. In my own, as yet fairly limited experience, I recalled something that was incredibly effective for anger triggering. Louise, you did ask me as I went through the steps of recalling if this was something I could deal with, which is so supportive, and I said I could. But it was actually a great learning experience for me because I felt terrible afterwards, and it took me a week of real exploration and questioning to work through my feelings. I had no idea how much that distant lurking memory was affecting me. Taking it out of its box and looking at it, dusting it off and placing it back on the shelf has actually been a really positive experience. I guess I have had the benefit of a lot of therapy though, so I can call upon techniques I have learned to help myself with the processing. So I wanted to share that experience as well because I want to give you a balanced view. And then another one of our students said, I was aware of method acting from before and I knew a lot of my favourite actors trained in the method, so it was always something that interested me, but I did have a very negative experience with it, with a teacher who I still think to this day went about it the wrong way. And a lot of the other students in the class agreed. We were pushed to the limit so quickly and left to deal with all the emotions and repercussions by ourselves, and there was a lack of support. So I think with the right teaching and methods, it is so incredibly beneficial, and I've seen my abilities really go from strength to strength at standby. And then another one of our students just basically said they don't believe method is dangerous. They think it gets used in a big PR push kind of way during like the Oscar season and the award seasons. And, you know, it's used to really, as a marketing technique, to push their films forwards. So as you can see, there are lots of different opinions, even from within our students who are training in the method. So then I decided to have a look at this from a psychological perspective by looking at what the psychologists are saying. So this was interesting. This caught my eye because the title is Actors Highly Vulnerable to Mental Health Problems. And so there's been a lot of research done from the University of Adelaide, which is obviously in Australia, and they are aiming to look into the profession of acting from a psychological standpoint. And it goes on to say that these experts, these psychological experts, found that Australian actors, so it was just obviously this study was done in Australia and not beyond, experience a wide range of threats to their mental well-being. So the researchers from the University's School of Psychology conducted in-depth interviews with a group of 20 Australian professional actors, and they did this because they realised that very little had been done to actually try and understand the experience of the acting profession in this country. So they're going at it more from the business side and their experience as an actor in the profession as opposed to the craft. However, they did say that there are many positives associated with acting, such as feelings of personal growth and a sense of purpose in the actor's work. And they were saying that many of them see it as a calling and couldn't imagine doing anything else professionally, and they feel very driven to do it. However, this being vulnerable to mental health problems actually didn't come from the craft itself, they found. What they found is that their mental well-being is threatened in a range of ways, such as lack of autonomy in their profession, lack of control over their employment and general working environment, complex interpersonal relationships, a high level of self-criticism, a high level of criticism by family and friends for their choice of profession, and then they found there's a heavy drinking culture in the acting industry, which I have to say, having been in the acting industry for many, many years, I can say I have seen that heavy drinking culture. So that's kind of moving away from whether the method is dangerous or not, but it is highlighting the fact that mental health in the acting industry is very, very vulnerable, which kind of can tie into this whole question of whether method acting is dangerous or not. And I have to say, from my experience of coaching aspiring actors and professional actors for over a decade, a good majority, now I don't know the percentages because I haven't sat down and worked them out, but a very high percentage of our students have struggled with mental health, whether that be depression or anxiety. And I can only say that from my own experience of also struggling and being challenged by those things, I know that I have to take a very, very, very empathetic approach to coaching actors, but I don't take responsibility for their mental health, because then that opens a whole other can of worms of me trying to save all my students, which I can't do and I'm not qualified to do anyway. So yes, I've taken a big range of views in this is method acting dangerous question because it's a really, really interesting one. And I've come to the conclusion that, we're in the art of feelings. As actors, we are predominantly in the art of feelings. And we are using the same thing, the same instrument, which is our body, to create our art on as what we're using to live day-to-day life with. So, of course, there are going to be unresolved issues within us because we're human and humans are very complex. And of course, because our art deals with feeling, unresolved issues can arise. Of course, we might come across a character who is struggling with something that so happens to trigger something within us that is unresolved. So, yes, but unresolved issues can arise from our work because we are very complex. We are very unique with our own life experience. And of course, we've got our own issues from childhood and our teenage years and our early adult life and continued adult life that is sitting within our body as well. But it did make me think about the other side of method acting. You see, I think many people just believe that method acting is solely about recalling emotions and working with emotions. And whilst that is obviously a big part of our work and of our craft, there is also the physical side of the method. So for those of you that don't know, there's a technique called effective memory, which is the one that many people talk about being dangerous. And that's the one where, you will find a trigger to help you stimulate a feeling in a scene. But then on the flip side of that, we've got the animal exercise, which is a very physical exercise. And that allows you to mold and adapt your body so you can create a completely different physicality for your character. And obviously you're using animals to stimulate this, to inspire you with this. And then it got me thinking about athletes. So with an athlete, like maybe a footballer or a basketball player or an MMA fighter or a boxer or whoever, any professional athlete, we kind of take it as expected that injuries are going to occur with them. Now, a physical injury is still a trauma. So you don't just get emotional traumas, you can get physical traumas as well. So if you get a wound, that's a physical trauma. If you break a bone, that is a physical trauma. And yet athletes trauma themselves physically and nobody bats an eyelid. It's not questioned. It's just kind of expected that that's part and parcel, that if you don't warm up properly or you've not recovered from a previous injury and then you go in and get another injury, well, then of course that's going to happen. And there seems to be this just acceptance of it, that's normal. But when it comes to the emotional side of acting, all of a sudden, it's not normal that we've now reopened maybe something that we didn't realise we hadn't dealt with emotionally. And now that's a big problem. So it raises the question of, is there still a massive taboo around mental health? Is there still a lot more for us to learn around mental health? And is there also still a lot more for us to do to learn about the human psyche and our experiences and how our experiences impact us as we pursue our dreams as actors? And these are a lot of questions, and I'm not saying I've got the answers to them, but they're just things I want you to consider that I thought would be interesting for this podcast. So, is the method dangerous then? Well, here's the thing. Because there is obviously the side to the method where we are using emotions in our work, and I've already said it can cause unresolved issues from the past to arise, then yes, of course, you could re-trauma yourself, or you could open a can of worms that you've not dealt with emotionally that could send you to some dark places. I'm not going to lie about that. And I'm a method acting coach, and I use this method myself in my own acting. So of course that can happen, and we've got to be honest about that. What I want to say though is I've put together some tips that I think would help working with the method be useful for you. So the first thing is you have got to know yourself. 1000% you have got to be, as an actor, no matter what method you use, no matter what technique you use, you have got to know yourself, and you've got to be in the process of continually getting to know yourself, because we are always evolving as humans. So regularly ask yourself the question, who am I? What triggers me? What are my limits? What experiences have I been through that I've not dealt with? What experiences have I been through that I've dealt with and have helped me grow? What challenges have I been through that I'm not ready to face yet? What challenges have I been through that I have faced and I feel okay with? Who am I? And who am I goes much deeper than that as well. How have the experiences shaped me to be who I am today? How have the experiences I've been through shaped my thinking? How have they shaped my behaviour in the world? How have they shaped how I interact with other people? How have the experiences I've been through moulded and shaped the lens in which I see life through? And these are all deep questions, and you're not going to get the answers to these straight away. This is going to take a lot of asking the question, who am I? But it is the first question, or one of the first questions we do go to in the method, because if you can get into a position where you know yourself as well as you possibly can, even though this is going to be a continuous exploration, then you are in a much better position to know what's going to trigger you in the art of acting and what isn't. So then you're in a much better position to know how to work safely. Because here's the thing, you don't just have to work in the method to open a can of worms emotionally and, to be taken back to those dark places with any acting technique that you use, because all acting is dealing in the art of feeling. That can happen. So I would say whether you use method acting or not, always be in the process of figuring out who you are and getting to know yourself on a deep level, because that's also useful for character work anyway. If you can understand yourself in a really deep way, you're going to find it much easier to be able to understand characters and their motives and their behaviour and their psyche. So that can only be a good thing. It can only enhance your art. It can only enhance your skills. So the first step always is know yourself. Who am I? The second step, this is crucial, absolutely crucial for any art form, well, not any art form, but any form of acting, whatever method you choose to use. Heal yourself. You don't have to act from your scars as I'll say everybody, but a lot of people talk about. I am a big believer that artists and actors should be self-developing alongside learning their craft. Go to therapy. There is absolutely nothing wrong in going to therapy. Going to the gym is so normalised. Nobody bats an eyelid. Nobody questions why you're going to the gym, because it's become a societal norm. That's one of the things that we do to stay healthy. So why is therapy looked at as something bad or less than the gym? Why do we look upon people going to therapy as, oh, there's something wrong with them, when we could take that same approach to people going to the gym? No. Going to therapy is a very healthy thing to do. We have got to normalise going to therapy the way we normalise going to the gym. Looking after your mental health is just as important as looking after your physical health. So heal yourself. If you can afford to go to therapy, go to it to heal these unresolved issues that absolutely all humans have. It's not just actors that have unresolved issues. All humans across the planet do. It just so happens that acting can highlight those unresolved issues. So get yourself to some therapy when you can afford it. Now, if you can't afford therapy at this moment in time, there is an absolutely amazing psychologist on Instagram called The Holistic Psychologist. I follow her work and it has transformed me just so amazingly. And she gives out so much information free of charge. And I would highly recommend following her on Instagram to start to, learn about who you are and learn about your traumas and learn about these wounds, these emotional and psychological wounds that you're carrying around, because you could learn so much just from her Instagram page alone. And she's a licensed psychologist. So that also takes us back into that first step of knowing yourself. That will help you do that. So know yourself and heal yourself so you know what you can work with and what you can't work with. And then the third thing is take responsibility. Absolutely take responsibility. You do not need to go to any dark, unresolved places in your life for your craft and your art and to create a character. Take responsibility and say no to those things and only work with things that you've dealt with and that you feel okay with and comfortable with. Do not get into this idea of, oh, well, the method made me go there. No, you are the artist, you are the actor, and you always have a choice. And it's empowering to know that you have a choice of what you can go to in the emotional work and what you can't. Also, say no to directors or acting coaches if they are pressing you to go to some place that you are not ready to dive into for your art. If they are pressing you to go to some place that you are not comfortable with, say no. No is one of the most empowering words you can ever have in your vocabulary, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with you saying no. And I would encourage you to say no more often. A sign of a good acting coach is one who is going to collaborate with you, one who's going to try to understand you, and is not going to push you into these really dark places where you have been wounded and all these psychological and emotional wounds are coming back up. That's not a responsible acting coach. So please don't ever feel afraid of saying no, of not wanting to go to those places. You are within your right to do that. You are entitled to say no, and you are entitled to work with autonomy and knowing what's best for you in terms of your emotional experiences. So get comfortable saying no, and you don't have to justify to anybody why you're saying no, I'm not willing to go there. That is being a healthy actor. That is putting a boundary in place that you are making very clear is not to be crossed. Okay? And it's very important that you can do that. The next thing you want to do is, if you are wanting to work with the method and you're really excited and you're really curious about it, and your acting inspirations use the method, ask for honest feedback about that acting coach that you're considering working with. Go to their current students and ask them for feedback. And as a method acting coach myself, I would encourage you to go and ask my students about me. Go and do that. You've got to get an honest experience from other people who've worked with these coaches, because like one of my other students said, when I asked about whether they'd thought method acting was dangerous or not, and they said they'd done method before with another coach, and that coach had pushed them too far, all of them, too quickly, and then left them to deal with everything. You need to know about these things, because then you have to make an informed decision as to whether you believe that coach is going to be right for you or not. So always ask for honest feedback and testimonials and reviews. Like, go and read them from these acting coaches that you're considering working with. And then the final step is to be fit, be physically fit and psychologically fit. I've touched briefly upon the animal exercise, which is another brilliant way of working in the method. But, you've got to have a certain level of fitness for that as well. I'm not saying you've got to be a pro athlete. That's not what it's about, but you need to look after your body. And here's the thing, if you start to make little promises to yourself every single day, whether that be a promise to go for a 20-minute run every single day, or whether it be a promise to yourself to drink 8 glasses of water a day or 4 glasses of water a day, that's going to have a positive impact on your psychological well-being as well. Because making these small little promises to yourself is firstly loving yourself, which is very, very important in this industry, considering how much rejection there is. It's very, very important in being able to put those boundaries out there and say no when somebody's pushing you to go to a place that you don't want to. And it is also very, very important for just developing yourself as well. I'm a big believer in self-developing, because it has an impact on the work that you produce as an actor. So be physically and psychologically fit. So if you are physically fit, as in, I'm just going for a 20-minute run a day, or I'm going for a 20-minute walk per day, then that will positively impact your psyche as well. And it is so, so important that you do that. This is an industry, never mind just the craft side of things, but this is an industry where there is a ton of rejection, and you have got to be suitably armed up for that as well as the craft as well. I personally believe that the method it's been very cathartic for me, and it has also empowered me as well. It has empowered me to get to know myself on a much deeper level than just doing a 9-to-5 office job, where I probably wouldn't be getting to know myself that well on this deep level. And because I've got to know myself on such a deep level, I now know what I can work with and what I can't. So, for example, mental health issues and challenges do run in my family, and they've led to some very devastating things happening. And those devastating things that have happened and have affected me would never, 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 never come into my work as an actor. And if an acting coach or a director was trying to push me to go to those places, I would say no, and I would question their motives as to why they were trying to make me go to those places. So the method for me has only been a positive experience, but it's like anything, isn't it? The method isn't paint by numbers. Do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. You have to do all of these things. The method is there for you to pick and choose from it what works for you and to create your own method. So in summary then, and to end this podcast, is the method dangerous? Not if you get the right guidance from the right acting coach for you. Not if you get to know yourself and continue to commit to getting to know yourself. Not if you take complete responsibility for what you choose to work with in the creation of your characters and the character's emotional life. And not if you make looking after your mental health an absolute priority at all times. Then no, the method won't be dangerous, because you'll be armed up with lots of tools and techniques that can help you not only with your acting, but in life as well. And just remember though, there are many, many more aspects to method that can be so bloody therapeutic, which we've not even touched upon in this podcast. So things such as the relaxation exercise, the sense memory exercises that we do, the concentration exercises that we do, the script analysis, the immersive improvisation. Effective memory is only one small part in a massive machine of the method, and you don't have to use it if you don't want to. Above all, what I want to leave you with is that the method is about finding unique moment-to-moment behaviour for the character. I honestly believe that this is going to be a debate that's going to go on whilst ever there are actors, and I'd love to know what you think. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. So let me know in the comments, which are right at the very bottom of this page. Let me know your thoughts on whether you feel or think the method is dangerous or not based on your experiences. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I hope you've taken a lot from it, and I hope there's been so much to think about. I'll see you again in the next episode.